The polar vortex, a swirling, ever-present mass of icy air high above the North Pole, acts like a silent guardian of the Arctic. It's a vast, spinning system that shapes the fate of winter weather across the globe. When winter bites hard, the polar vortex often gets blamed for our coldest, most bone-chilling winters, sending shivers down the spine of entire continents. Most of the time, it's held firmly in place by the powerful jet stream, which acts like a barrier, keeping the Arctic's deep freeze locked away from the rest of us. But sometimes, the vortex wobbles. A sudden stratospheric warming event can disrupt and weaken that jet stream, opening the gates and letting frigid Arctic air spill southward into regions unprepared for such cold. This isn't a typical storm, but a dramatic shift in the atmosphere, a moment when the coldest air on Earth escapes its polar prison, plunging places like North America, Asia, and Europe into a deep freeze that can last for weeks. The path this icy air takes isn't random. It's carefully shaped by the geography of mountains, valleys, and the flow of ocean currents, creating dramatic contrasts in which regions get hit the hardest and which are spared. That's why, during some of the most severe cold snaps, the UK can find itself shivering in temperatures even colder than parts of Scandinavia, despite being further south. The answer lies in the journey of the cold air, and the natural barriers like mountain ranges and warm ocean currents, such as the Gulf Stream, that it encounters along the way, sometimes blocking or redirecting its path. It's a fascinating story of how land, sea, and air conspire together, weaving a complex tapestry that creates two very different winters, sometimes just a few hundred miles apart. Look at a map. The UK is a low-lying archipelago, exposed on all sides, with no major mountains to block incoming air. Its open geography means cold winds from the north and east sweep in unimpeded. In contrast, the Scandinavian peninsula is a vast, mountainous landmass stretching deep into the Arctic. The Scandinavian mountains form a spine that divides Norway and Sweden, acting as a colossal wall against invading air masses. Norway's dramatic western coast faces the Atlantic, while Sweden slopes gently to the Baltic. Despite being further north, Scandinavia's mountains and orientation give it a unique defense against polar outbreaks. The UK is an open gate, Scandinavia, a fortified wall. This fundamental difference sets the stage for their contrasting winter experiences. Geography is the first clue to why the UK and Scandinavia face such different fates when Arctic air descends. One is exposed, the other protected. The ocean is the next key player. The Gulf Stream, a powerful current of warm water, flows from the Gulf of Mexico across the Atlantic, becoming the North Atlantic Drift. This current acts as central heating for Western Europe, keeping the UK and Norway's coasts much milder than their latitude suggests. The UK's climate is shaped by this warmth. Winters are usually wet and mild, not frigid. The current continues north, keeping Norwegian ports ice-free, even above the Arctic Circle. Both regions benefit from this oceanic heat pump, but when the polar vortex breaks down, the interaction with cold air is very different. In the UK, the sea's warmth is quickly overwhelmed by Arctic blasts. In Norway, the ocean and mountains combine to create a unique shield. The same current that brings mildness also shapes how each region weathers the storm. When the polar vortex weakens, wind direction becomes everything. The fate of entire countries can hinge on which way the air decides to flow, setting the stage for dramatic weather changes across Europe. Normally, the UK is shielded by mild, moist Atlantic air, which keeps winters relatively gentle. But during a vortex event, a wall of high pressure forms, blocking this usual flow. Suddenly, icy winds from the east are unleashed, sweeping across the continent and heading straight for Britain. These relentless winds begin their journey over the vast, frozen plains of Siberia and Eastern Europe. As they travel westward, they lose what little warmth they had, picking up a brutal chill that intensifies with every mile. With no mountain ranges to slow them down, these frigid winds slam into the UK, transforming towns and cities into a frozen landscape. This is the infamous beast from the east, a weather phenomenon that can paralyze daily life and bring the country to a standstill. In Scandinavia, the same winds first batter Sweden and Finland, blanketing forests and countryside in deep snow and plunging temperatures far below freezing. But before reaching the UK, this air must cross the North Sea. The sea is too narrow and cold to warm the air, so the chill remains undiluted, ready to strike. The result? The UK receives a direct, unmodified blast of Arctic air, bringing sudden snowstorms and bitter cold. Meanwhile, Norway's western coast is protected by towering mountains and the warming influence of the sea, creating a natural barrier against the worst of the cold. So, while Britain faces misery and disruption, Norway's coast often escapes the harshest conditions, remaining surprisingly mild in comparison. In the end, it's geography and wind direction that decide who freezes and who stays mild, shaping winter's story across northern Europe. The journey of the cold air is everything, a powerful reminder of how nature's invisible forces can shape our world. The Scandinavian mountains are Norway's greatest defense. When Siberian air arrives, it's forced to rise over the mountains, dumping snow on Sweden. As the air descends into Norway, it warms up, a phenomenon called the foehn wind. This warm, dry wind, combined with the North Atlantic current, keeps Norway's coast surprisingly mild. While Sweden shivers under snow, cities like Bergen can see temperatures above freezing. The mountains transform a frigid blast into a source of warmth. The UK, lacking such a barrier, takes the full force of the cold. Scandinavia's natural shield creates a pocket of mildness on its western edge. Geography turns the same Arctic air into two very different winters. Let's look at real numbers to understand how winter can feel so different across Northern Europe, even during the same cold snap. During the infamous 2018 Beast from the East, UK temperatures plunged well below freezing. London barely managed to reach 0 degrees Celsius, while rural areas in the countryside dropped to a bone-chilling -10. The city's iconic streets and parks were transformed into icy landscapes, and the countryside was blanketed in thick frost and snow. Meanwhile, in Bergen, Norway, much farther north than London, temperatures stayed several degrees above freezing. Instead of snow, the city saw steady rain, with locals navigating wet pavements under umbrellas, a stark contrast to the UK's icy grip. On the other side of the Scandinavian mountains, cities like Stockholm and Helsinki faced deep freezes and relentless heavy snow, with temperatures even colder than those in the UK. Their streets were buried under thick layers of snow, and the air was sharp and biting. The difference? Bergen is shielded by towering mountains and warmed by the nearby sea, which acts like a giant radiator, keeping the city's climate milder even in winter. In contrast, Stockholm is exposed to the full force of Arctic winds, with nothing to block the icy blasts sweeping down from the north. London and Stockholm both freeze, but for entirely different reasons. While Bergen, nestled between mountains and sea, escapes the worst of the cold. Geography and powerful ocean currents dictate three entirely different outcomes from the same weather event, shaping each city's winter in unique ways. The same polar vortex can create a frozen UK, a mild and rainy Norwegian coast, and a snowbound Sweden, all at once, within just a few hundred miles. It's a vivid illustration of how the interplay between land and sea shapes our winters, creating dramatic contrasts in weather and temperature. The tale of these three cities reveals the true power of geography, reminding us that where you are can make all the difference when winter arrives. The UK's vulnerability comes from its lack of natural defences. Its mild, wet winters mean infrastructure and homes aren't built for deep freezes. When Arctic air arrives, it sweeps across flat eastern England, with the North Sea offering little resistance or warmth. The result? Sudden, severe cold snaps that disrupt transport, agriculture, and daily life. The UK's greatest asset, proximity to the Atlantic, becomes a liability when the polar vortex opens the gate to the Arctic. With no wall to hide behind, the islands face the full force of winter. Geography leaves the UK exposed to the Arctic's fury. Norway is a country split by its own mountains. Coastal cities like Bergen and Tromsø stay mild, while just inland, temperatures plummet. Cross the mountains, and you enter a world of deep cold and heavy snow. Sweden and inland Norway face true Arctic winters. The mountains create a sharp climate divide, maritime warmth on one side, continental chill on the other. Life, infrastructure, and culture adapt to these contrasts. The foehn wind is a familiar warming presence on the coast. Even within Scandinavia, geography creates microclimates that defy expectations. The interplay of mountains, wind, and sea shapes every winter. Understanding the polar vortex, ocean currents, and mountains isn't just academic, it's vital. For the UK, it means better forecasting, preparation, and resilience against rare but severe cold snaps. For Scandinavia, it explains why coastal and inland life are so different, shaping everything from building codes to daily routines. Recognizing these patterns helps societies adapt, save lives, and reduce disruption. The tale of two winters is a lesson in how geography and climate interact. As our world changes, knowing these forces helps us build a more resilient future. The shape of the land and the warmth of the sea decide who freezes and who thrives.